and Dr. Deepak Jain. Now we are ready with our presidential oration. I request our chairpersons, Dr. Rajesh Rajan, Dr. Kumar Anshuman, Dr. Mitesh Chauhan, and Dr. Ajay Chabra. Dr. Rajesh Rajan is cardiologist at Sabah Al Ahmad Cardiac Center, Kuwait. He is chairman of IACC and managing editor of Annals of Clinical Cardiology, the Journal of IACC. Kumar Anshuman, attending consultant at BL Kapoor Cardiac Sciences and Super Specialty Hospital and a fellow of non-invasive cardiology. Dr. Mitesh Chauhan, consultant clinical cardiologist at Surat, and Dr. Ajay Chabra, the renowned diabetologist of Ranchi. Over to chairpersons to introduce our speaker, Dr. Manoj Gerela.
Yeah, welcome back, Dr. Manoj Gerela, who is the National President of the Indian Association of Clinical Cardiology.
You are not audible, Dr. Rajesh.
Now it's audible?
No, your voice is very thin.
It's audible?
You are audible, but voice is very thin.
I don't know. Now it's okay?
Better than before.
Okay, fine. Welcome, Dr. Manoj Gerela, the National President of Indian Association of Clinical Cardiologists. Manoj is a well-known cardiologist in Mumbai, Mulund. He is attached to Asian Heart Institute as a consultant cardiologist. He's going to talk on the management of diabetes in COVID era. Welcome, Dr. Manoj, and over to other chairpersons, Dr. Ajay Chabra and other chairpersons. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure this talk by Dr. Manoj will be an enlightening one. The entire universe in India, including our city, is going through a very rough patch. And during this COVID-19, a lot of factor comes into play in a type 2 diabetic patient's life. And we look forward to his presentation. I invite Dr. Manoj for his presentation, please.
Over to Dr. Manoj, please.
Manoj, you are not audible. Manoj, check the mics. You are not audible. Check your mics.
Audible now?
Yeah, now it's a little bit.
Am I audible now? Hello? Am I audible now? Am I audible now, Dr. Rajesh?
Lot of disturbances. It's not clear at all. Why don't you stop sharing the screen and come again?
Okay. ये फोन आया था मुझे, देखता हूँ मैं क्या। आवाज Am I audible now?
Yes, Manoj. Go ahead. Audible. Go ahead.
Great. Am I visible? My slides
Yeah.
are visible.
Slides are visible. Go ahead. Make it in slideshow and go ahead.
Okay, great. It's a lot of problem here in Mumbai. It's raining heavily and there's a lot of network issues. I'm sorry for that. Apologies at the outset. And congratulations for the first ever digital cardio zone 2020. Congratulations to the organizer, Dr. Vineet Jagnani, and our chairman, Board of Governors, Dr. Rajesh Rajan, and the entire team of Dr. Vineet and IACC. I once again confirm, am I audible and my slides visible?
Audible and visible. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. So as this conference is for cardiology and diabetology, and we are going through the COVID phase, we will discuss on the same thing. And diabetes plays a very important role in the management of COVID. Hyperglycemia in patients with COVID-19 is definitely linked to significantly worse outcomes. You can see the pictorial besides the slide. The survival with a well-controlled blood glucose level is almost 99%. Whereas it is other way around. The patients who are not having good control have a poor outcome, indicating a need for early normalization of the blood glucose levels. There was a vast study of almost 1,000 odd patients in US which depicts presence of diabetes or uncontrolled hyperglycemia linked to longer length of hospital stay and higher mortality risk. One second. One second. Yeah. So I was talking about the high mortality risk, almost 28.8% versus 6.2% in the comparison group without hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia worsens the prognosis in the people in the ICU. In patients with COVID-19 disease, hyperglycemia, it is definitely dangerous. It can be sometimes fatal. Why? Because there is a rapid inflammatory response. There is increased glycosylation of the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, that is ACE2 receptor. Higher propensity for cellular intrusion of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, that is SARS-CoV-2, via the ACE2 receptor, which we discussed just now. So it is the amount of glycosylated ACE2 and not just the amount of ACE2. Diabetes plays a very important role in this COVID patients. And above all, even if a diabetic patient with a good A1C control and a good glucose control have a better outcome than the diabetic patient who have a poor A1C control and a poor blood sugar control. That is associated with the viral binding and fusion. The most important of first steps in caring for patients with COVID-19, as I told, a fast normalization of hyperglycemia during the COVID-19, and that may result in decrease of inflammatory cytokine release. So it will decrease the inflammatory cytokine release and in a way help in the delay of the cytokine storm and lower the ACE2 binding capacity for the virus. This slide, you can see I just now discussed before mortality rate amongst the patients who were discharged or died as the diabetes or uncontrolled hyperglycemia. It's almost 28.8% vis-a-vis patients who don't have diabetes have only 6.2%. Mortality rates among patients who were discharged or died, comparing patients with diabetes hyperglycemia, you can say it was only 14.8% here, where the A1C was more than 6.5, and it was almost 41.7% in patients with uncontrolled hyperglycemia without the known of diabetes, that is uncontrolled hyperglycemia. So hospital care delivery standards as per ADA 2020 recommendations are, you have to perform an A1C test on all patients with diabetes or hyperglycemia with blood glucose of more than 140 milligram per deciliter admitted to the hospital if not performed in the prior 3 months. And when caring for hospitalized patients with diabetes, consult with a specialized diabetes or glucose management team whenever possible. So involve the diabetes care team along with the management of COVID at the same time in a diabetic patient or a newly detected diabetes patient whose blood sugar levels are persistently high. Insulin therapy should be initiated for treatment of persistent hyperglycemia starting at the threshold of more than 180 milligram per deciliter. And once the insulin therapy is started, a target glucose range of 140 to 180 should be targeted. It's recommended for the majority of the critically ill patients and non-critically ill patients also. Whereas more stringent goals, that is fasting 110 and post-lunch, post-meal 140 may be appropriate for selected patients if they can be achieved without significant hypoglycemia. So average target should be around 140 fasting and 180 post-meals, whereas in young patients you can target 110 fasting and 140 post-meals without having the risk of hypoglycemia at the same time. Basal insulin or a basal plus bolus correction insulin regimen is the preferred treatment for non-critically ill hospitalized patients with a poor oral intake or those who are taking nothing by mouth. So what we are practicing is basal insulin to take care of the fasting blood sugar and a bolus insulin to take care of the postprandial blood sugar levels. Insulin regimen with basal, prandial and correction components is the preferred treatment for non-critically ill hospitalized patients with good nutritional intake. And use of only a sliding scale insulin regimen in the inpatient hospital setting is strongly discouraged. What it was used a couple of years or a decade back, it is strongly discouraged now because as per the current guidelines, you have to use the basal bolus or the basal plus regime and not prepare a sliding scale for the nursing staff or the associate doctor. It is not appropriate and not recommended by the ADA as per the latest guidelines. Hypoglycemia plays a very important role, and hypoglycemia management protocol should be adopted and implemented by each and every staff of the hospital. A plan for preventing and treating hypoglycemia should be established for each patient. Episodes of hypoglycemia in the hospital should be documented in the medical record and tracked so that it is not repeated in the future, and this treatment protocol can be used in the prevention of hypoglycemia in other patients also in the future. The treatment regimen should be reviewed and changed as necessary to prevent further hypoglycemia when a blood glucose level falls below 70 milligram per deciliter. So as I said before, now the perioperative care in the ADA 2020 recommendations. Lots of patients are coming to us for preoperative checkup. For example, an 88-year-old patient came yesterday with the history of fall in the bathroom with a fractured neck femur, and as a protocol, before the operation, we are nowadays doing COVID for each and every patient. So he turned out to be COVID positive. Although he was cardiac-wise fit, all was fit, but then we have lots of patients getting COVID positive and asymptomatic COVID positive. So it plays a very important role how to go about it and how to go ahead at the same time. So target range for the blood glucose is 80 to 180. Risk assessment of patients with diabetes has to be taken. Metformin and any other oral glucose lowering agent should be withheld on the day of surgery. Monitor the blood glucose at least every 4 to 6 hours while patient is taking nothing by mouth. The dose with a rapid or short-acting insulin, as I said, give half of the NPH dose which was before, or 60 to 80% of the dose of long-acting analog, or maybe we can start an insulin pump, of a basal insulin. Now, management of infected patients in the ICU. Most of the patients don't require ICU, at least here in Mumbai, but there are very few patients who require ICU. And then how do you take care of them in the ICU? Monitor for new onset diabetes in infected patients and management of infected patients with diabetes in the intensive care unit. So the plasma glucose monitoring, the electrolyte monitoring, the blood ketones for diabetic ketoacidosis, and also the beta hydroxybutyrate. The liberal indication for early IV insulin therapy in severe courses. To avoid ARDS, that is acute respiratory distress syndrome, and hyperinflammation. For exact titration, avoiding variable subcutaneous resorption and management of commonly seen very high insulin consumption. The therapeutic aims for inpatient intensive care, as I said, plasma glucose concentration to be targeted around upper limit for frail patients, around 90, the lower we can keep it 90. A1C should be targeted as in other patients 7. EGMS continuous glucose monitoring, we should do it. Time in range of around 70% or more, or 50% or more in the frail and older people. We have to specifically take care of the frail and older senior citizens. We have to avoid any hypoglycemic event in that patients. And which is a very important complications what we see otherwise also in the patients, non-COVID patients, but in COVID, we have to definitely see the glucose levels are maintained around 140 average, upper limit 180, lower limit 100. So the anti-diabetic therapy should be initiated or intensified for patients who repeatedly have preprandial blood glucose more than 180. The target glucose depends on several patient factors, as I discussed before, particularly comorbidity. Generally lies between 140 and 180. Owing to its well-established efficacy and safety profile, insulin is the therapy of choice for these patients. I repeat, insulin is the therapy of choice for these patients. Preferably as multiple daily injections or in ICU, continuous IV infusion by the syringe pump should be opted. Both metformin and SGLT2 inhibitors should be stopped in patients with COVID-19 and type 2 diabetes to reduce the risk of acute metabolic decompensation. So a special note has to be taken for patients who are on metformin and on SGLT2 inhibitors. For both drug classes include increased risk dehydration, acute kidney injury, and chronic kidney disease. So close monitoring of renal function is recommended. Regular renal function should be recommended. Metformin and SGLT2 inhibitors should be stopped, discontinued prophylactically in outpatients who don't have any evidence of COVID-19, but they are having suspected COVID-19 patients. So to conclude, diabetes patients are prone to severe COVID-19 and significant increased mortality. As I said in the earlier slide, the difference was almost 30%, and non-diabetic patients almost only 6%. Diabetes patients must be urged to comply with social isolation and other preventive measures of COVID-19 infection. Patients must be made aware of hyperglycemia by stress and infection. There are lots of patients because of stress, anxiety, and because of this infection, the sugars are high. Also at the same time, when IV steroids or oral steroids are given, the sugar level is bound to go up and bound to increase. So we have to take special care of that. So in that case, insulin is the choice. Otherwise, if the patient is outpatient, definitely we can monitor closely on oral hypoglycemics. But as I said before, metformin and SGLT2 inhibitors have to be discontinued. Fast normalization of hyperglycemia improves the prognosis in people affected by SARS-CoV-2. Why? It decreases the inflammatory cytokines and in decrease ACE2 binding capacity for the virus. So both ways it helps in decreasing the complication. Thank you very much. It was a short and swift presentation. I hope it was clear for most of you, and if at all any queries, I am open for queries or open for any questionnaire. Dr. Rajesh and Dr. Vineet.
Well, Dr. Manoj, it was a wonderful presentation and very illicit. And during this COVID era, management of diabetes has become a big challenge for all of us, especially patients who are in ICU settings and who might require a lot of steroids for the management of COVID lungs. The forum is open for question. Any questions coming in from participants, please?
There is one from Dr. Deepak Jain that increased use of steroids in moderate to severe COVID. Frequently see that there is drug-induced diabetes with normal A1C levels. Does the treatment of hyperglycemia differ in these patients? Should we add OHA in them?
Sorry, your voice is not clear, Dr. Vineet.
I'll just repeat it. By the way, it's in the chat box, but I'll repeat it.
Deepak Jain's question is there that increased use of steroids in moderate to severe COVID, we frequently see drug-induced diabetes with normal HbA1c.
Yeah.
So, does the treatment of hyperglycemia differ in such a patient where there is drug-induced hyperglycemia, steroid-induced hyperglycemia?
We have to treat the high blood glucose levels. We have to start insulin, preferably in IPD patients. And if the patient is not admitted, then we can start definitely oral hypoglycemia, oral hypoglycemic agents, except avoiding the metformin and SGLT2 inhibitors. We definitely have to treat the blood sugar levels, irrespective of HbA1c.
A drug-induced hyperglycemia in a patient with normal HbA1c at a IPD setting requires insulin support and only insulin support. There is no place for oral hypoglycemic agents there. And after the steroids are stopped, 48 hours after the steroids are stopped, the blood sugar usually goes down. And by the time we discharge the patient and move the patient from ICU to the room and we discharge the patient, the blood sugar usually goes down. And I don't think such patients require OHAs for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I agree, Dr. Jajay.
There's another one. Do we need to stop SGLT2 inhibitors before surgery? From Vinay Bhaiya.
Vinay Bhaiya should answer this. The best person to answer this question. Kindly unmute him, please. Is he there?
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the answer actually.
But Chavda sir wants that you should answer this question.
Rightly said that we need to stop metformin at least a day before a major surgery, not for the minor surgical procedure. But even for SGLT2 inhibitors, there are a lot of patients who are taking this as SGLT2 inhibitors and metformin. Even patients who are taking SGLT2 inhibitors for any major surgery should stop at least 3 days before the surgery. If the patient is taking, it should postpone the surgery if it is start 3 days, at least 3 days. That is a newer FDA recommendation which has come up, I think, 15 days back.
There is one more question for Dr. Vinay Bhaiya. Should a combination of DAPA and Seksha should be used without metformin, or it should be used as an add-on to metformin?
See, if a patient is intolerant to metformin, patient is having GI symptoms, or patient is having excessive flatulence, bloating, or patient has got something like ACCD, vitamin B12 deficiencies, or some contraindication to metformin, then definitely you can use this combination even without metformin. Otherwise, the recommendations or the guidelines categorically suggest that you need to add on with the metformin, not just start as a single combination drug.
Any more questions? Any more comments?
Just to add on to what Vinay sir says, every type 2 diabetic patients, irrespective of his weight or his BMI, who walks into our clinic should be on metformin until unless it's contraindicated.
Yeah, perfect.
I guess we all agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even I can tell you, I can add on to Dr. Manoj's presentation. There are enough data now to suggest that metformin, patients who are on metformin do better with COVID than patients who are not on metformin.
Absolutely.
The outcome of patients who were on metformin was much better than patients who were not on metformin. Because today, what they are recommending is if the patient is on metformin and is stable, he does not have any contraindication to metformin, like hypoxia or a ventilator support, or patient having renal abnormality. Patients should continue with metformin even in the ICU along with insulin if needed.
Actually, clinically speaking, definitely yes, sir. I agree.
Yep.
Each and every patient has to be on metformin unless and until contraindicated.
Yes, even in ICUs with COVID-19, patients are doing better with metformin than without metformin, sir. And this is a report coming from even Mumbai, sir, Nanavati Hospital. One of my my friend who is working along with you, Dr. Manoj Chawla and Dr. Rajiv Goel, who is in Nanavati, they have this data coming up from Nanavati Hospital.
Yeah. I'm aware.
Dr. Rajesh, to add something. Dr. Mitesh, Dr. Rajesh, our chairpersons for the session, to add something. Dr. Anshuman.
Presentation.
I thought since it was an oration, we should not have questions for that as a.
I understand, but I agree, but we went into the flow.
Yeah.
I very much agree with you, sir.
But this is our first digital Zoom conference, so everybody is into that euphoria of this conference, and then everybody is so eager to ask questions and sitting at their own chambers and own place. So they are taking optimum utilization, and we are really thankful to Dr. Vineet for organizing this digital conference, and we are really thankful to you all senior clinicians to take out your valuable time to be a part of the digital conference. I thank you once again.
I request our to state Dr. Manoj Garela with medallion and certificate of presidential oration as faculty at this place. I also request our chairpersons to kindly accept the certificate of faculty on behalf of Cardiozone, Dr. Rajesh Rajan, Dr. Kumar Anshuman, Dr. Mitesh Chauhan, and Dr. Ajay Chhabra, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was a pleasure connecting with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, chairpersons, and thank you, organizers, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Once again, we have little bit change in the schedule. I will be requesting Dr. Pragnesh Shah to present Cardiozone oration.